Welcome to this week's episode with Rabbi Levi Farkash. This is the Chavrusa. In this episode, we are sharing some valuable lessons about Moses and how Moses rose from a shepherd to arguably the greatest leader in Jewish history. This lesson is about how our background does not determine our destiny, and we also discuss how Moses rose in spirituality by doing good deeds and service for others. And finally, we talk about how to rush to do a mitzvah, and you should not wait to do a mitzvah until the time is convenient for you, but to do a mitzvah when the mitzvah is needed. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did, and please share this with your friends and loved ones so they can listen in and learn from Rabbi Levi Farkash. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Chavrusa. Here we are, Marshat Shemos, and we have three wonderful life lessons you can learn from Moses' upbringing up until the point that he took the people out of Egypt that will help balance and navigate our inner passions for Judaism and for the Jewish people. So, to start off, Moses gets born amidst the decree that Pharaoh didn't want any Jewish boys alive, only the Jewish girls. His mother hides him in his house for 3 months, then puts him in a basket, ultimately ending up at Pharaoh's palace, where he grew up. Even though he came from Amram and Yocheved, who were incredible human beings, leaders of their generation, nevertheless, his entire upbringing was in the house of the Pharaoh. And he had that culture and he had that environment. Yeah, we find a very interesting story early on in Moses' teenage years. He is confronted with a scene where he sees an Egyptian beating a Jew, and that brings out an inner passion, as we will learn right now. So our learning starts off, while Moses came from the most special lineage. He grew up at Pharaoh's palace and he was educated in accordance with the Egyptian philosophy. This is all in terms of Moses' birth. After that, however, his upbringing and education was in Pharaoh's household. As the verse states, the child grew, and she brought him up to Pharaoh's daughter, and there in Pharaoh's house, Moses grew. He grew up there not only in a physical sense, but intellectually and spiritually, as Rashi explains that Pharaoh appointed him to oversee his household. It is clear that such an appointment also influenced his spiritual and intellectual profile, absorbing the wisdom of Egypt, since Pharaoh was the king of Egypt. Although Egypt subscribed to an alternative and pure system, its wisdom was nonetheless genuine wisdom, as is well known. Egyptian wisdom was one of the greatest and deepest forms of knowledge in the entire world, as is evident from what Scripture says in praising the extraordinary wisdom of Solomon. The wisdom of Solomon surpassed all the wisdom of Egypt, right? So he grew up in a very high intellectual, sophisticated atmosphere. Here we see something remarkable. Despite having grown up as Pharaoh's household, the moment that he went out to his brothers and saw their suffering, he was taken by their distress, and immediately he understood that his role was to act on their behalf and to strive for their welfare. Look towards 4 Exodus chapter 2, 11 and 12. What happened? Now it came to pass in those days that Moses grew up and went out to his brothers and saw the suffering. And he saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his brothers. What happened? He turned this way and that, and seeing that there was no man, he struck the Egyptian and he hit him in the sand. Says Rashi, Moses grew up that Pharaoh made him a minister of his estate. He saw their suffering. He turned his heart and eyes to their sufferers. He was a taskmaster appointed over the Israelite officers. He would wake them with the rooster crows to call them to their work. And what did he do? He was striking the Hebrew. He was lashing him and beating him. Who was the Hebrew man? He was the husband of Shalomith, the daughter of Jibri. The taskmaster had laid his eyes on her. He woke the Hebrew man at night and took him out of his house. The taskmaster then returned and entered the house and his wife, while she thought it was her husband. When the man returned home, he became aware of what happened. When the Egyptian saw that, he had realized he struck him and tormented him all day. He turned this way and that. He saw that the Egyptian had done to him in the house and what he had done to him in the field. But it should also be understood literally, right? So we have that scenario, a very, very famous story of Moses striking the Egyptian because he was tormenting his fellow Jews. Says that we have to consider, for many years in childhood and adulthood, Moses lived in that house of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He was quite satisfied with the situation, and rightly so. Since he was not involved in indulgent excesses, God forbid, but he was occupied with the wisdom of Egypt, it was a very big balance. It was a good place to be. But it was clear while he was in Pharaoh's house at a time when Pharaoh ruled unchallenged, he had no connection or association with those sons of Yedabrack and Lieber. And he had nothing to do with the Jewish people. Zero. And yet, as soon as he left Pharaoh's house, Moses went out to his brothers and saw their suffering. It affected him so deeply that he risked his own life killing the Egyptian who was striking the Hebrew man, one of his brothers. One can readily understand the great danger involved, especially given the Egyptian wisdom and power. Indeed, Torah Pharaoh sought to kill him, and he was forced to flee. It was then that God revealed himself to him from within the burning bush, and this led to the redemption of the Jewish people. This, as the Rebbe, provides guidance to every Jew. A significant number of Jews in the present generation are akin to the child taken captive among non-Jews, whether literally raised among non-Jews or they're captured by the foreign gods of sin, leading to evil inclination. However, once such a person is influenced and they have some degree of connection to Judaism, one can immediately demand the self-sacrifice that Judaism meant for fellow Jews. At first glance, you could think it's unreasonable. A person might argue, since I spent my entire life growing up and being educated among non-Jews, and only now I have emerged from that captivity. But how can anyone demand at this point that I should have self-sacrifice for Judaism, and that should be my entire purpose? Christ, I just got started. For so many better people qualified for having self-sacrifice to the Jewish nation, I'm just initiating my journey. Who am I? He says that this is what we have to learn from Moses. Despite the fact that he grew up his entire life in the Pharaoh's palace, he was immersed in Egyptian wisdom. The second he saw his brothers in pain, he knew what his inner calling and his inner purpose and his responsibility was for a Jew, and he had to go to ultimately to self-sacrifice. Moses, being the ultimate leader of the Jewish people, gives us this power. He's the faithful shepherd, one of the spiritual leaders who brings godliness into all the collective souls of Israel, even those that are held captive by the evil inclination and were raised amongst the non-Jews. But since they were born Jewish, they have Jewish parents, just as Moses was born to Abraham and Yepemeth, the moment that they get out of that captivity, their connection to Judaism, they are capable of having that self-sacrifice right away. People sometimes think that they might not, and not be reasonable, that they should be the one to step up and take the Jewish people, right? Come from a different background. He was raised in a place without a strong Jewish community. Moses tells us otherwise. I was a child, says Moses, grew up in Pharaoh's house, cut off from my people. Yet the moment I encountered my people in pain, I immediately was ready to give up my life for their sake. Indeed, we see the same in our generation. Israel wars in general, in the recent war of October 7, Jews from all over the world left everything behind. They went to Israel to enlist to defend the Jewish people. Among them were Jews seemingly had only a weak connection to Judaism, no significant communal education. I myself have a cousin who is not religious. My first cousin went to move, who is in the special forces. We could have went to the American Army, right? He's not a religious Jew. But I said, if I'm going to go into the Army, I'm only going to go to the place where I'm going to be able to defend my fellow Jews that are not able to be protected. And on October 7th, he wasn't on duty. And he went right away to the line of fire. And he said he was in way more dangerous situations, but he was never so scared. And nevertheless, he said he went and he descended and he fought, all for the sake of protecting the Jewish people. I mean, it has that within all of us, right? Blessed one we learned from Moses' upbringing is that although for many years he was completely cut off from anything Jewish, growing up in Pharaoh's household, nevertheless, the moment came when he had to be the one to act on self-sacrifice for the sake of his fellow Jews, and he acted. And the lesson to us is, we think we grow up in Pharaoh's palace. We think we grow up disconnected and therefore we don't qualify. And we think that we're surrounded by a terrible environment and therefore we don't qualify. From Moses, we learn that we have the power, we have the energy, and no matter what, as long as we are ready to step out of our surroundings and into connection, right? And if you're listening to this today, that means that you have been willing to step out of your limitations and into connection. That's it. You have the responsibility to go and do what you can to save another Jew physically and spiritually. And then we continue. Moses gets kicked out of the palace. He runs for his life, and he ends up in the land of Midian. And what happens? He meets Jethro and his daughters, and he ends up marrying them, and is working for his father-in-law Jethro as a shepherd. And ultimately, he encounters the burning bush, and he gets sent back to Egypt. Let us read the story, source number 5 of Moses and the burning bush.
Moses was pasturing the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, priest of Midian. He led the flocks to the wilderness and came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. An angel of God appeared to him in a flame of fire from within a thorn bush. Behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet it was not consumed. Moses said, I will turn aside now and see this great sight. Why does the bush not burn up? God saw that he had turned to look, and God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And he replied, Here I am. God said, Do not come closer. Remove your sandals from your feet, from the place on which you stand is holy ground. When Moses was shepherding Jethro's sheep, one sheep ran away from the flock. Moses ran after it until they reached a shaded area, and spring appeared. The sheep began to drink. And Moses said, I didn't know you were thirsty and tired. He put the sheep over his shoulder and went. God said, You had mercy on the sheep. By your life, you will shepherd my sheep, Israel. Indeed, Moses was a shepherd.
So we see from this beautiful episode, in the next stage of Moses' advancement towards being the ultimate redeemer of the Jewish people, we find a very interesting and practical guidance in our day-to-day life. Says the Baal Shem Tov that the burning bush is a reference to the material world, which is in comparison to the spiritual world, is called a lily bush. Within that very place, we must perceive the flame of fires. The burning bush symbolizes the material world. It is precisely the lowly, limited, and physical place that the flame, the spiritual inspiration, is meant to be revealed. Divine revelation is not intended only for places of obvious holiness, such as a study hall or moments of prayer, but it's meant to appear in life itself, in business at home, within the physical body, and in everyday worldly encounters. This is the task of every Jew, to reveal the divine presence precisely in the material part of the world, not to run from reality, but to illuminate it, not to abandon the bush, but to turn into a vessel of godliness. But this we will learn out how we could reach the experience of the angel that the Lord appeared in a flame from within the bush. It is achieved specifically by devoting ourselves to the flock, running after them, caring for their needs. Through this commitment, we are then able to see the vision of the flame of fire. How did Moses actually get to Mount Sinai? Moses was shepherding a flock around Midian and began with one small sheep that wandered away to drink the water. But Moses didn't ignore it. He did not say, oh, it's one sheep, and let me give up on it because I have the rest of the flock. He went after the sheep. He returned the sheep to the flock. This devotion of caring because of one sheep, the concern for the small and weak that led Moses to the place where he meant to have divine revelation. From the pursuit of a single sheep, he came to Mount Sinai, right? Without the burning bush, he couldn't get to Mount Sinai. Oh, this is another practical guidance in our life. You want to have the ultimate high spiritual experience, revelation closest to God, It doesn't begin by saying, let me isolate myself and try to figure out a spiritual connection that have nothing to do with the world, right? You have to do it with devotion to others. When you're sensitive and compassionate and you're willing to stop everything in your own personal journey in order to help someone else, that's exactly where you find the burning bush. That's exactly where you find the path to your personal culmination of a spiritual journey, like your own Mount Sinai. And this brings us to this tremendous story of the Tzemach Tzedek. What happened? The Tzemach Tzedek was very accustomed to seeing his late grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, even after he had passed away, in nighttime visions. And during these nighttime visions, the Alter Rebbe would answer certain questions he had on the Torah. What happened? Once the Tzemach Tzedek was sitting alone in his room, engrossed in his study, several questions arose that he did not know how to resolve, and he wanted to see his grandfather, right? And he was not able to do so. He tried tapping into that opportunity to encounter the Alter Rebbe, but it couldn't happen. One morning, the Tzemach Tzedek went to pray at the shul of his father-in-law, the Mikveh Rebbe, of blessed memory, and while passing through the market, Rabbi Levi, a simple and God-fearing man who had living through work at the market, came to the Tzemach Tzedek and asked him to lend him some money until the evening or the following morning to make a profit in the market. And the Tzedek said that after davening on his way there, he would give him a loan. When the Tzemach Tzedek came to the shul to daven, he remembered the holy teaching that Rabbi Elazar gave a coin check for a man, and after that he prayed. And another teaching that a loan is greater than charity. So the Tzemach Tzedek realized that he was wrong not to give Mordechai the loan right away. Don't wait until you return home. So right away, he went back to the market. He found Mordechai, but by now the villagers had already gathered with their carts and wares, and it was difficult to locate him among them. When he finally found him, he gave him the loan and returned to the shul. And when the Tzemach Tzedek wraps himself in his towel, and all of a sudden, he saw the Alter Rebbe in the vision with a shining conscience. The Alter Rebbe said to him, one who hears they belong to a Jew with a whole heart without any ulterior motives and does a favor for a Jew with love as commanded to love your fellow like yourself, the gates of heaven, palaces are open before him. And the Tzemach Tzedek recounted the story to his son in 1846. He said, just as one helps a Jew in livelihood, he would turn 70 small coins from a tiny carob, all the gates of heavenly palaces are open for us. So a tremendous story. Moses set aside everything to help the one sheep. And do the one sheep, it brought about the culmination of him getting to Mount Sinai with the giving of the Torah. We find here from the story the same way, right? To help another Jew, to put aside your own spiritual growth or personal growth because a Jew is in need of help, that will lead you to the burning bush, which will lead you to Mount Sinai. Don't disregard it. It should be noted, says the Rebbe, that righteous individuals, even while they're in this world, have full mastery over their affairs, and they transcend the limits and constraints of the body. The Alter Rebbe was not revealed earlier, only after the event described above, because this is how the Alter Rebbe wished it to be in accordance with the spiritual state and the mode of service. When one wishes to reach the highest level in understanding and grasping the Torah, it requires intense effort and concentration in Torah study. Physical matters, our own or others, can interfere with this. This is all more so when we need to do a favor for another Jew in the way that is suited to them. This cannot be done casually or just by the way. You have to invest in the other person's situation. You have to consider their needs, provide help in a manner tailored to them. And years investment and distrust of our concentration will help us to reach a higher level. The Rebbe teaches us that there is even a more effective path helping a fellow Jew. When we give charity, assist someone else, we feel more connected to spirituality. Why? Because our connection to spirituality is not natural. The human nature, we are occupied with ourselves, our needs, our limits. The soulful connection is a gift from above, a kindness from God. Here God tells us We should overcome our ego and give yourself to another Jew. I will give to you as a gift of connection, spirituality, self-connection. In other words, the only way to experience godliness, to feel closeness, vitality, connection to God, runs through giving and stepping outside of oneself. So in lesson number 2, from Moses' upbringing is that just like Moses went out of his way to go and help out the sheep and led to his personal Mount Sinai, so to us, we want to help, right? We want to help our fellow Jews, but sometimes we want to do it on our own time. We have a time in our work day. We wait to give charity maybe when we have a surplus of money to give. We learn from Moses is the time to act is now. If you don't act now, if you don't find the sheep, if you don't have to have one fellow Jew that needs help, then you're maybe potentially missing your personal burning bush, which will lead you to your personal Mount Sinai. A Yid needs help, a Jew needs help. We don't delay. We put aside our own personal experiences and needs to help another Jew.